Trump lost it as the disaster in Texas spiraled, and in true fashion, he tried to change the subject, this time by reviving a dangerous economic myth. With FEMA failing and outrage growing, Trump turned to tariffs, pushing the same failed ideas that once worsened the Great Depression, but what he said about them, historically and economically absurd. Let's break down the meltdown, starting with this brutal reality check from Lawrence O'Donnell.
They brought back tariffs to see if they could save it. No objection to that from White House press corps. No objections at all. That just sailed right through, sailed right by them. Viewers of this program know that these Smoot-Hawley tariffs were written by the Republican chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee and the Republican chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, both of which committees have jurisdiction over tariffs, and they got the tariffs in effect by history named after themselves, Senator Reed Smoot and Congressman Willis Hawley. They were signed into law by Republican President Herbert Hoover in 1930, and they caused and accelerated profoundly the Great Depression. The tariffs came before the worst of the Great Depression, and they worsened the Great Depression, and they were done and put into law entirely by Republicans. And Joe Biden, on his sickest day in the presidency when he had COVID and he could barely speak, could never have said anything as utterly ignorant of history as that lunacy Donald Trump spoke to the White House press corps about tariffs coming after the Great Depression. But Donald Trump can do it, and the White House press corps says nothing because they apparently know nothing about the subject of tariffs or the Great Depression, and who knows what else. The shame of the White House press corps and the Trump campaign press corps is their disgraceful failure to be able to confront Donald Trump about his lies about who pays the Trump tariffs. That is the simplest lie Donald Trump tells about tariffs, which has become a huge subject in his presidency that no White House press reporter is apparently capable of understanding. And Donald Trump has never been confronted on that lie by the White House press corps. If an individual member of the White House press corps does understand all of this about tariffs and has been unfairly blocked by the Trump people or colleagues in the room from being able to ask that question, I hereby apologize to that unknown reporter for lumping that reporter in with the genuinely disgraceful job that the larger group has done in their complete failure to penetrate that very simple lie. But the public knows. The public knows much better than the White House press corps that Donald Trump is lying about who pays the tariffs. On this, the American public, much, much smarter than your average White House reporter. A new poll shows 81% of Americans are very concerned or somewhat concerned about the impact of tariffs on their personal finances.
Lawrence O'Donnell absolutely dismantled Trump's ignorance on tariffs. But what's even more stunning is how right he is about the media silence. Trump's lie that tariffs are paid by foreign countries is one of the easiest to debunk, and yet the White House press corps never holds him accountable. It's not just a lack of curiosity, it's a complete abdication of responsibility. Meanwhile, Trump continues to rant about economic policies he clearly doesn't understand, referencing historical disasters like the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, as if they somehow support his position. They don't. They made the Great Depression worse, and they were created entirely by Republicans. Even in the worst days of Biden's presidency, he never said anything so detached from reality. And yet, Trump sails through unchallenged. But here's the twist. Trump reportedly knows he's flailing, and he's furious behind the scenes. That's where this gets even more revealing. And next, we dig into the leak Trump fears most.
Taco Trump went off at aides as he was forced into embarrassing climb down. Donald Trump complained to his aides about the lack of progress being made on trade deals as he was debating whether to push back his tariff deadlines yet again, according to a report. The president announced on Monday he was imposing a new wave of 25 to 40% tariffs on products from more than a dozen countries, including key trading partners such as Japan and South Korea, unless those countries reach new trade deals with the U.S. by August 1st. A series of scary letters sent to world leaders pushed back a July 9th deadline that Trump had previously set for countries whose products were hit by the most aggressive Liberation Day tariffs announced in April. Trump was tempted to let the tariffs take effect, but he spent the weekend on the phone with aides and allies who argued he should set a new deadline, the Wall Street Journal reported. During the calls, he said he was frustrated the administration hadn't made progress on trade deals with other countries, the Journal reported. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said officials were making progress with India and the EU and could reach deals if they were given more time. Originally, the president had promised to liberate America from trade deficits by striking 90 deals in 90 days, but so far only 3 countries have announced partial trade framework with the U.S., the UK, China, and Vietnam are those countries. Trump blamed the other countries for failing to make offers that were good enough for the U.S., sources told the Journal. He also told aides that he was riding a wave of momentum from his big, beautiful budget bill, which is widely unpopular, and his strikes on Iran, whose effectiveness have been called into question. Trump said he wanted to keep up his supposed winning streak, with victories on trade policy, according to the Journal. The Daily Beast has reached out to the White House for comment. A White House spokesperson told the Journal that other countries were interested in lowering the tariff rates on their products, but the United States, the world's biggest and best consumer market, holds the cards, sure, and leverage, not true, in negotiation to unilaterally set deals with appropriate tariff rates for our trading partners. The tariffs are an import tax paid by American companies, with the cost primarily being passed on to consumers. The letter sent out Monday left observers scratching their heads after the typo-ridden messages failed to shed light on the administration's trade goals. If you wish to open your heretofore closed trading markets to the United States, eliminate your tariff and non-tariff policies and trade barriers. We will perhaps consider an adjustment to this letter, Trump wrote in near identical notes to each leader. These tariffs may be modified upward or downward depending on our relationship with your country. Asked about the tariff deadline over the weekend, Trump himself seemed to have no idea what was going on. At least one MAGA insider has said the tariff deadlines and announcements are all theatrics, a claim that the White House has denied.
Yes, of course it's all theatrics. That's the entire point with Trump. It's not about substance, it's about the show. The tariff threats, the typo-ridden letters, the invented deadlines. None of it is real policy. It's cosplay governance. And the funniest part, he genuinely thinks sending scary letters makes him look tough. Letters. Not calls, not negotiations, letters. Are they even being mailed? Because international shipping takes time. And that July 9th deadline is already looking more like improv than diplomacy. Trump wants to appear strong without actually doing anything hard. That's why he rages at aides. Not because he has a strategic vision, but because things aren't moving fast enough to give him another fake win to brag about. All of this is about image, not outcome. And while he rants about being the world's best deal maker, he's managed to secure 3 partial trade frameworks out of the 90 he promised. Meanwhile, American consumers are footing the bill. Literally. But if you want to see where the incompetence really kicks in, just look at what he's done with FEMA. Let's dive into the chaos behind his latest disaster response.
The reality is that Trump doesn't think natural disasters should be his problem at all. I mean, from the very first week of his new term, Trump has proposed getting rid of FEMA altogether, just eliminating it. Because in Trump's view, the federal government shouldn't have to deal with emergencies. That task should be left to the states. And as he sees it, the only role he should really play here is being the point person on whether states get anything from the federal government at all. He loves to have that power. Remember, this is what Trump said just last month, when asked whether he would let his personal views of California's Democratic governor get in the way of delivering wildfire relief.
Will your recent dust-ups with Governor Newsom impact additional wildfire relief out there? They've requested $40 billion.
Sure, maybe. The man's incompetent. Hatred is never a good thing in politics. When you don't like somebody, don't respect somebody, it's harder for that person to get money.
The idea of a president, any president, weaponizing FEMA like that, which is essentially weaponizing disaster relief that people in red states and blue states and purple states and people who aren't political at all depend on, all to punish political enemies, is obviously unbelievably alarming. It should alarm everybody, even people who voted for him.
Donald Trump has never seen disaster relief as a responsibility, only as leverage. From his very first week back in office, he's floated the idea of eliminating FEMA entirely, leaving states to fend for themselves. Not because it's more efficient, but because it gives him control. He wants to decide who suffers and who gets help based on whether he likes a governor or not. That's not leadership, that's cruelty. When wildfire victims or flood survivors become pawns in his petty political games, we all lose. And trust me, this abuse of power is far from over.
Unlike California, Texas is of course a red state with a Republican governor and plenty of Trump supporters. So if Trump was going to help any state, you'd think it would be a state like Texas. And he did sign a major disaster declaration within days of the flood. But what's unclear right now is how much help FEMA is capable of providing anymore, even when Trump wants to provide it. Because for months now, we have seen report after report of people inside FEMA warning that the agency hasn't been preparing for disasters the way it normally does. In fact, the agency has reportedly been losing employees at such an alarming rate rather than staffing up to prepare for disaster season, which is normally what they would be doing during this period of time. In Texas, where there are, again, at least 161 people unaccounted for, sources within FEMA told independent journalist Marissa Cabas that, quote, barely any staff members deployed. As one FEMA staffer put it, quote, we're doing a lot less than normal. And the acting FEMA administrator, David Richardson, is, quote, nowhere to be found. Now, this is important because recovery in a place like Texas is not 1 day or 4 days. It's weeks, it's months, it could be years in some places. That's why it's important. And given the relative silence from the head of FEMA, you might be wondering what his boss, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, oversees the department, is doing with her time right now. Is she stepping in? I think you know the answer. Well, yesterday, in the midst of this crisis, Kristi Noem was asking her followers on social media to vote for their favorite portrait of her to hang in the South Dakota state capitol, of course. And no, I am not in any way joking. I thought it was a joke when I first saw it, but it wasn't a joke. I mean, they could pick between what appears to be an oil painting of her in a cowboy hat on a horse, or her in a cowboy hat on a horse, or, for some variety, I suppose, her in a cowboy hat on a horse. So that's where her head is at.
My resident, that was the one that called 911, he was trying to get to the family and all the way to water all the way to his waist and debris hitting him, and he was yelling, please throw me your baby, and they couldn't, and they got swept away.
While Texas faces a devastating flood crisis with over 160 people still unaccounted for, FEMA is barely present. And that's not just negligence, it's policy. Under Donald Trump, FEMA has been gutted, understaffed, and left leaderless. And while lives are at risk, Trump's political allies like Kristi Noem are too busy asking people to vote on their favorite glamour portrait to hang in the Capitol. Seriously, this isn't just about unpreparedness, it's about a willful disregard for the agencies that protect us. And when FEMA is missing in action, the consequences fall hardest on everyday Americans. The president might issue a disaster declaration, but without a functioning response system, it's just empty theater. People need help, not campaign stunts. If you found this breakdown important, make sure to like, subscribe, and share, and stick around. What we're uncovering next could shake up everything you thought you knew about Trump's inner circle.